A millionaire returned to visit his ex-wife and son after 3 years of disappearing without a trace. But when the door creaked open, he froze at the sight inside. "Who are you?" The question came from behind the partially opened door. A child's voice, raspy from the cold, stopped Ethan in his tracks. The little boy couldn't have been older than 4, his hair matted to his forehead, eyes swollen, arms clutching a filthy teddy bear. Standing in front of house number 23E, with its half-collapsed tin roof and peeling wooden door, Ethan Lavoie never imagined he'd hear those words on a bleak grey afternoon. He wore a dark grey cashmere coat, standing silently in the poor neighbourhood, holding a worn piece of paper in his hand. A few lines were scrawled across it in blue ink, the handwriting shaky like someone trying to mimic a child. "If you were ever a father, you should know this place is colder than any prison." No name, no signature, just an address. Ethan had read it at least 10 times. Was it real, or just some cruel joke? He couldn't say, but his heart refused to let it go. A sound of footsteps echoed from inside. A woman stepped out, bracing herself against the doorframe for balance. She was thin, wrapped in an old, sagging sweater that barely shielded her from the winters that had worn her down. Her cheeks were sunken, her skin pale from sleepless nights, and the thick, shiny hair she once had was now pulled back loosely with a frayed cloth tie. Her eyes, the same eyes that once made Ethan fall silent in the middle of any party, were now hollow, weary, drained of all their light. Anna, his ex-wife. Ethan exhaled, not from the cold, but from guilt pressing down on him. "What are you doing here?" Anna asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to make him stand up straight. Behind her was a narrow room, dimly lit by a single exposed ceiling bulb. On the table sat a pot of cold, plain porridge and a small bowl of coarse salt. Ethan stared at it for a long time. Before he could react, Diego shivered from the cold. Anna leaned down to wrap another scarf around her. Ethan stepped back, as if a gentle but unyielding force was pushing him away. "It's her! Diego, right," Ethan whispered, not sure who he was speaking to. "It's too late." He sat down, uninvited, took a water bottle from his coat pocket, poured it into an old paper cup, and slid it toward Anna. She didn't touch it. I didn't know it had gotten this bad." Anna gave a slight, crooked smile. There were times it was much worse than this. "You should have told me. I wrote to you. More than once." No one ever answered. Ethan was caught off guard by her words, but he chose to stay silent, remembering what Nora, his close cousin, had once told him. When a woman's angry, anything she writes is laced with poison. He'd chosen to believe that because it was easier than facing the truth. Anna wrapped Diego in another scarf and sat her close to the stove. The little boy didn't look at Ethan. He just played with the string on his teddy bear's ear. "He doesn't say much," Anna whispered. "He's learned to stay quiet when someone yells." Ethan slowly stepped toward Diego, crouched down. "Would you like something to eat? I can go get it." He shook his head. "Mama says I'm not supposed to ask for things." "Asking isn't wrong, as long as it's from the right person." He looked up at him, longer this time. His eyes were red. "If you're my dad, then why'd you only come now?" Ethan had no answer. Any explanation he had was useless now. Outside, the sky darkened. The street lamp cast a faint light through the window. Ethan stood by it, staring out. Behind him, Anna held Diego in her arms. Her voice carried through the quiet. "If you're here out of pity, then don't stay. We need someone who keeps his word." Ethan turned back. "I won't leave, not unless you tell me to. But don't think I came to apologize. I came to start over." Anna said nothing. She simply pulled the thin blanket higher over her son and left the door behind Ethan slightly ajar not closed, not inviting, but not shutting him out either. For the first time in years, Ethan felt he could sit still in a cold room. Because at least here, there were people he'd once lost. And Ethan had no idea that beyond that barely open door was a truth he had never imagined. The soft clink of the spoon against the porcelain bowl sounded like a spoon tapping on silence. Diego sat curled up on the wooden chair, his tangled hair hanging low, nose sniffling. Ethan sat across from him, both hands resting on his knees, watching the boy he could finally call his son. This time, he had decided not to leave like he always did before. After Anna turned and walked toward the kitchen, Ethan quietly slipped the watch from his wrist, placed it on the table, then took off his cashmere coat and hung it on the rusty nail by the door. A small but deliberate gesture, like he was asking to stay, offering nothing but his stripped-down self. Anna stood by the stove, the fire barely enough to warm the bowl of porridge. She didn't look at him. Her voice was steady. The porridge isn't good. But Diego's never had anything else, so she doesn't know it's bad. Ethan gave a slight nod, like a man accepting a sentence. Diego sipped spoonful after spoonful, without flinching, without a question. The boy was used to it. You think showing up now changes anything? Anna turned to him, her eyes as cold as the night outside. There's no room here for people like you people who promise to come back, but never do. Ethan didn't argue. He just kept his eyes on Diego, who was using his finger to swipe the last bits of porridge from the edge of the bowl. Kids learn quickly how not to trouble anyone. A steady knock came from the porch, not urgent, but familiar, like someone who'd known the door for a long time. Anna stepped out to open it. A woman in her early 30s, hair tied neatly back, small frame, a slight limp in her right leg, stepped in with a worn paper bag and a coat fraying at the shoulders. She carried a wooden cane like it was a natural extension of her hand, brought some green onions and ginger. Cold nights like this make coughs worse. She set the bag on the table. She froze when she saw Ethan. Didn't greet him, just turned her face away. You're still alive, huh? Guess I figured I'd never actually see you walk through that door again. Well, color me surprised. Selena. Anna said it softly, like a warning. Selena shrugged and glanced over at Diego. How's the kid? Then she turned back to Ethan, her face unreadable. Didn't you say you'd take care of them for life? Or maybe my memory's as injured as my leg. Ethan exhaled, eyes lowering. For the first time, he felt unnecessary, but he still didn't want to leave. Another knock on the door, this time softer and more patient. Anna went to open it. An old man, around 70, stood there in a worn wool coat and a beret, holding a battered leather bag. His face was thin and stern. Where's Diego? Has he been coughing all day? His voice was raspy but firm. Hello, Mr. Marcel, Anna said softly. Yes, since this morning. Mr. Marcel walked straight over to Diego, pulled out a thermometer, and didn't ask anything else. Ethan was about to speak, but Anna gave a slight shake of her head. Ethan sat back down, watching. Diego stayed still. He didn't resist, just stayed quiet. This boy's clearly malnourished, and the way he reacts to adults, that's not regular fear. Mr. Marcel didn't look up. He's not afraid of strangers. He's afraid of the ones who once yelled at him, yanked his arm, made his mother cry. He's not scared of new faces. He's scared of old memories that look like people. The words hit Ethan like a slap. He froze, heart tightening, as if someone had reached inside and squeezed it. That one sentence dragged him back to the last afternoon. He left Anna just a single suitcase, a nod, and the naive belief that distance would somehow hurt less. He had once believed that the court-ordered monthly support would be enough for Anna and their child. He thought he could still be a responsible father, even from far away. But he hadn't known. He hadn't known that, from the day he walked out, Diego had never even heard of him. And Anna, the one who once believed in his promises, was left with nothing. Not a cent. Not a word. And now, Ethan found himself asking, was there some kind of mistake? Suddenly, the front door rattled violently. A loud kick, heavy boots grinding against the wooden floor. "Anna, open the damn door. Why the hell did you lock it?" The voice, sharp, familiar, made Anna freeze. Diego trembled. Selena stood, her cane clenched in her fist. Mr. Marcel quickly pulled Diego into the other room. "Who is it?" Ethan asked in a low voice. "Henry," Anna whispered. "If he sees you here, this is going to spiral out of control." "What is he to you?" "My ex-husband. Or more honestly, someone I once hoped could help me and Diego get back on our feet. But the longer he stayed, the worse everything got. There's nothing left you could call peace." Ethan clenched his fists. Anna looked at him, eyes pleading. "Please, just go. I can't bear it if that happens again in front of Diego. I'm truly scared." Ethan stood up, not to flee, but to retreat, because at that moment his presence had become a threat. The door flew open. Henry stormed in, his face flushed, reeking of alcohol. He spotted Ethan and squinted, as if doubting his own eyes. Well, look who crawled back. The guy who threw out the trash and now wants to pick it back up. What a joke. Anna quickly stepped in front of Ethan, shielding him. But before she could speak, Henry raised his hand and slapped her hard and clean. She staggered, hand to her cheek, eyes wide open, not crying, just trembling. Selena rushed forward, wooden cane raised. "Get out, Henry. This isn't the place for your crap." Ethan stepped in front, his voice lower and firmer than ever before. "Touch her again, and I swear you'll regret it." The room went dead silent. Henry hesitated for a beat, then gave a bitter laugh and walked out, tossing back a warning glare. Ethan turned to Anna. She didn't look at him, just gave a small shake of her head, still holding Diego tightly. Before stepping through the door, Ethan paused, reached into his wallet, pulled out a small bank card, and set it gently on the table beside a bowl of cold porridge. "For Diego," he said quietly, eyes fixed on Anna. "I can't buy back the time I lost. But maybe I can start again, start small, with something like this." He closed the door softly behind him, his eyes never leaving her. "I'll be back." Anna said nothing. She only drew Diego into her arms. The little boy clutched a torn teddy bear, his tiny hands tightening around it. And Anna had no idea that what was about to happen next would change her life forever. After leaving Anna's rundown house, Ethan drove slowly along the flooded street, his mind blank. He didn't go far, just a few blocks down to a small hotel, close enough to keep watch without drawing attention. Once he checked in, he took off his coat, sat down on the bed, and immediately called his assistant. His voice was low and firm. "I need you to pull every document related to the divorce with Anna. That includes letters, legal files, anything that was sent to the office over the past 3 years. I want to know if there's ever been a letter that was overlooked or mishandled." The assistant hesitated for a moment, then finally responded, "Yes, I'll get started right away." Ethan sat on the edge of the hotel bed, his back straight, as if pulled taut by an invisible string. The room was small, its walls painted a pale grey. A dim yellow lamp cast a soft but cold light. Rain tapped steadily against the window pane, each drop landing on the awning like a knock echoing in his chest. On the table lay the old divorce file. Ethan opened it. Page by page, each sheet felt like a piece of evidence, pointing to his own neglect back then. Something didn't add up. The name of Anna's representing attorney was unfamiliar, not the one she'd ever mentioned. And more troubling, the property division agreement bore the words, "voluntarily signed," standing out like the clearest scar in Ethan's life. He remembered that day vividly. Nora, his cousin, and also the company's financial manager had brought the document over, urging him to sign quickly because Anna wants this done as soon as possible. Ethan gripped the folder tightly and made a call. "David, I need you to recheck every record from my divorce. Anna's attorney's name, the asset agreement, something's not right. I'll send you photos." "Send them. I'll get started tonight." David, his longtime friend and legal advisor, answered without missing a beat. Ethan turned off the engine and sat still. In his mind, the broken fragments were starting to come together. He remembered the anger in Anna's eyes when she mentioned the letters no one ever answered. "I wrote many times, but no one replied." That sentence now rang clearly in his head. He turned back to the old files, searching through envelopes that had long been neglected. One by one, he reopened each letter, carefully reading every line, every postmark. Nothing from Anna. But there was one letter. Blue ink, messy handwriting. Ethan picked it up, his hand frozen mid-air. "If you were ever a father, you'd know this place is colder than any prison." He gripped the paper tightly, a strange feeling rising in his chest. The letter was signed Diego, but now Ethan wasn't so sure. A child didn't write words like that. It just didn't add up. "Who wrote this letter?" he muttered. He realized he wasn't just reopening the divorce case, he was unraveling the truth behind the letter that had led him back to that house. In a high-rise apartment downtown, Nora stood by the electric fireplace, holding a thick folder stained with age. Ethan's name was still clear on the cover, along with her own signature over the asset review line. She flicked a lighter, and the small flame licked at the paper's edge, spreading faster once it reached the brittle cover. Nora's face showed no emotion, but her eyes narrowed with intent. She pulled out her phone and dialed. The moment the other end picked up, she spoke in a low, sharp voice. "I paid you, Henry. You took the money to shut her up, to make him sign. Now keep your mouth shut. If Ethan catches even a whiff of this, it's not just you, we both lose everything." A sharp inhale, and then silence. "Understood." Nora hung up, standing still in front of the half-burning papers. A breeze slipped through the window crack, lifting the ashes into a swirl that formed a vague, shapeless figure. Her shadow flickered on the wall, shaky, smudged. On the table, an old parcel box lay open, inside a stack of handwritten letters, tied with a faded silver ribbon, letters Anna had sent to Ethan, never delivered. Nora stared at the familiar slanted handwriting, her lips pressed tightly. She had kept them all, and never regretted it. In her eyes now, it wasn't the fire that reflected back, but a door to the past swinging open this time, maybe for good. The next morning, Ethan met Selina at the small clinic just a few blocks from Anna's house. The room was pale with morning light, the smell of antiseptic mingling with the damp scent of rain still lingering on the tile floor. Selina was reorganizing the medicine shelf, her left foot limping slightly, but firm. Her gaze focused as if trying hard not to think about something else. "I didn't think you'd dare come back," Selina said, her eyes fixed on the medicine bottles. "Can you tell me what exactly happened between Anna and Henry? I need to understand everything before things spiral out of control." Selina turned to him, holding his gaze for a long moment. It wasn't anger in her eyes, but a heavy look, like she was weighing whether Ethan deserved the truth. "Henry showed up about 3 months after you disappeared. By then, Anna was barely herself. She didn't cry, didn't complain, just went quiet in a way that was honestly frightening. He came at exactly the right time, when a woman has lost all hope. Even a kind promise can sound like salvation. Ethan clenched his hand slightly. What about Diego? Anna raised Diego on her own for nearly 2 years. No support, no word from you. She tried sending letters more than once, but never got a single reply. When Henry came into the picture, he promised to help. But the truth is, he took control of everything. Whatever money you might have sent, if there was any, never reached her. Not even once. Selina paused, placed the last jar on the shelf, then pulled a crumpled piece of paper from the bottom drawer. She handed it to Ethan. This is the first draft of the letter. I tried to write it like a child would, clumsy, naive. But the things that needed to be said couldn't be disguised. Ethan looked at the paper in his hand, his eyes slowly reading each line. His hand trembled slightly. Why did you do this? Does Anna know? Selina shook her head, her voice hoarse. No. She doesn't. If she did, she'd stop me. But I couldn't just sit and do nothing. I used to be the one waiting for a knock that never came. I can't let Anna become me all over again. Ethan looked out the window. The early morning light broke through the grey clouds, casting a soft glow on Diego, who sat quietly in the corner, hugging her worn-out teddy bear. The child's eyes clear, yet somehow knowing too much. I won't let this go on, even if I have to turn over every old page. Selina gave a slight nod. The hardness in her face had faded, leaving only weariness with a trace of hope. Then start now. For someone like Anna, time has never been an ally. Outside, the rain had stopped, but inside Ethan, a storm had only just begun to stir. The phone in his pocket buzzed. It was his assistant. Sir, I've just double-checked the internal mail records. Several letters were sent from Anna's address to the company during the time you were overseas. But all of them were signed for by Nora. Ethan stayed silent for a few seconds, his eyes turning cold. Do you have receipt copies? Yes. I'm pulling them now, and I'll check to see what else may have been held back. Ethan hung up, his fist tightening. The letters' pleas for help that should have reached him had been deliberately swallowed by someone. And now, the past wasn't just knocking, it was demanding to be seen. The morning was overcast, the first rays of sunlight hidden behind the grey mist that settled over the poor neighborhood. In a small dirt yard, surrounded by makeshift houses, Diego was playing with 2 neighborhood kids. An old truck rattled past, letting out a loud screech. Diego froze, her eyes wide. And the moment Henry's figure appeared unexpectedly at the mouth of the alley, the little boy immediately dropped his toy, scrambled into the house, and crawled under the table, as if by instinct, a survival reflex. From a distance, Ethan saw the whole thing. He stood still in his dark coat, his breath caught in his throat. The boy didn't cry, didn't scream, just curled up in absolute silence. That silence hit Ethan harder than any scream ever could. Selina stepped out of the clinic and met Ethan's gaze. She said nothing, just gave a slight nod as if to confirm. You saw it. Ethan sat in the corner of a small diner next to the alley's corner store. A cup of hot tea had just been poured on the table in front of him. Martha, the shop owner well into her 60s, pulled out a chair and sat across from him, her eyes narrowing with concern. I once saw that little boy locked out on the porch during a snowstorm, just for spilling a glass of water. He sat there shivering, holding his teddy bear, too scared to knock on the door. Ethan gripped the teacup tightly, his lips pressed into a hard line. Why didn't anyone call the police? Martha let out a heavy sigh. Henry's name is on the lease. If Anna reports him, he can throw both her and the girl out on the street. And you know how it is, single mothers around here don't have many options. That afternoon, Ethan went to the local police department to request any records of abuse involving Henry. But after nearly an hour of searching, the officer said, "We couldn't find any official reports related to anyone named Henry in the system. No one's ever filed a complaint or reported him." Ethan sat up straight, his voice lowered. "What about the old files? Is there anything in his past?" The officer flipped through a few pages of the printed file, his brow furrowing. He was arrested for drunken disorderly conduct 6 years ago in another city, but the case was dropped because the victim refused to cooperate. Other than that, he hesitated. There was one incident where he nearly got sued for violent behavior at a construction site, but the company handled it internally, so no court records exist. Henry wasn't born a brute. He was just a failure, someone carrying a vague grudge against the world. And the dangerous thing was, he was easily manipulated. That's exactly why Nora chose him. Ethan said nothing. He simply nodded and left. On his way back, he stopped by the local clinic, where Dr. Marcel was examining a few kids from the neighborhood. The old doctor looked up, saw Ethan, and pointed to a wooden chair by the window. Diego tosses and turns, wakes up in the middle of the night, startled. Her eyes are wide open, but she doesn't cry, just clutches that teddy bear and whispers things no one can understand. I once noticed an old bruise on her shoulder. Could have been from bumping into something. Or maybe something else. But you know what worries me the most? Ethan stayed silent. No wound runs deeper than a child's silence. She doesn't speak up because she's afraid no one will believe her. And that eats away at her self-worth, little by little. That night, Ethan sat in his hotel room, flipping through a digital folder David, his close friend and attorney, had emailed him. David was calm, principled, a law school classmate from Ethan's university days, and had helped him navigate several tough business disputes over the years. Some things were starting to come into focus. Anna's supposed legal representative had never actually registered to practice law. The asset transfer paperwork had been handled by an intermediary, someone Nora had referred. A chain of connections was beginning to take shape. And the center of it wasn't just Henry, it was also his own cousin. Ethan picked up the phone and called David. "Get the paperwork ready. I want to sue Henry for child abuse and reopen the entire divorce case. But this time, we need stronger evidence to press charges. Start pulling security camera footage from around the neighborhood. Talk to neighbors who might serve as witnesses, and gather Diego's medical records. I want every single piece of information that could help bring him to court." Earlier that morning, in the cramped little house, Henry had woken up already fuming over a cold cup of coffee. He knocked the cup to the floor, shards scattering across the tiles. Anna silently knelt down to pick up the pieces, her hands trembling. Diego curled up in the corner, clutching her teddy bear, eyes wide and unblinking. Henry glared at the two of them, then yanked his coat off the hook on the wall so roughly it brushed across Anna's face. He stepped out onto the porch, pulling out his phone, his voice a low snarl through clenched teeth. "This isn't over. I can't keep her quiet if he keeps hanging around here." A woman's voice, on the other end, answered coldly. "Keep it under wraps. Things are starting to come apart, Henry. Don't let anything else slip." Every month, Henry received a regular payment, a quiet atonement for a reckless past, disguised as post-divorce support from Ethan. Not once did he mention it to Anna. He held the deed to the house, intercepted the mail, and charmed the local authorities like a supportive partner on paper. In truth, every dollar he got was spent on booze, gambling, and loud, senseless outbursts. Anna had no idea Ethan was still sending money. She believed he had made a clean break, completely abandoning her and Diego. And Diego, the little boy, who had never once been held by her father, grew up on plain rice, soaked in salted water. In winters where 3 layers of clothes still couldn't keep her warm, Some days, mother and son split half a roasted potato between them, staring in silence at the bright lights from the homes in the neighboring block. Meanwhile, Henry lived like he had every right to. He wore the jackets Anna washed, drank beer while she scrubbed dishes with water so cold it stung her hands. Whenever Anna dared ask about money, he would growl, "You think feeding you too is free?" In this house, I decide. And every time Diego dropped a bowl or cried too loud, his shadow fell across the room like a silent threat. Worst of all, Anna had become too used to silence being the safest option. She had no strength left to protest, no faith left to ask any more questions, and Henry, posing as some kind of stand-in father, carried on outside as if he'd made amends. But behind that rotting wooden door, 2 lives were being slowly crushed, day by day, by the very money Ethan sent in the name of responsibility. Early the next morning, Diego sat on the doorstep, a teddy bear in his hands. Ethan approached and crouched down to meet his eyes. The boy pulled back slightly. "Mind if I sit here for a bit, Diego?" Ethan asked. The boy gave a small nod, eyes still averted. Ethan didn't touch him, just sat quietly beside him. After a while, Diego spoke softly. "Mum said, you're not like him. But if I do something wrong, would you get mad at me?" Ethan looked at the boy for a long time. He took a deep breath, steadying his voice. "No, Diego. I'm not that kind of person. I'll listen. I'll stay, if that's okay with you." Diego shifted and cautiously leaned his head on Ethan's shoulder. His small voice rose again. "Can I call you Dad?" Ethan didn't answer right away. In that moment, as the child rested against him, a flood of old memories returned. He thought back to the days when Nora, his cousin and financial manager, had unexpectedly urged him to move to Europe and oversee a new real estate project. At the time, he had just come through a few minor arguments with Anna and believed that some distance might help them both cool off. He left, unaware that just a few weeks later, Anna would file for divorce. Those papers, Nora had said, were initiated by Anna. Nora was also the one who pressed him to sign quickly to avoid media complications. But thinking back now, everything had happened too fast. He signed them out of trust, believing Anna truly wanted to end things. He never imagined that tucked between those cold, legal pages was a child he never knew about, growing up in a world completely absent of his father's presence. Ethan held Diego gently, as if trying to cradle a piece of the past he had once let slip away. This time, he wasn't going to lose anything else. Outside, the early sun began to break through the thin clouds. A new chapter was beginning, where a father started again from nothing, and a child slowly began to learn how to trust a life no longer shaped only by fear. Attorney David's office was perched on a high floor of an aging building tucked into a quiet commercial district. Late at night, the fluorescent lights cast a pale glow over a desk cluttered with old case files. The soft clack of keyboard keys and the steady rustle of turning paper echoed in the suffocating silence. David and Ethan had weathered countless business lawsuits together, big and small, but this time it was personal. And that was rare enough to shake Ethan. He leaned over the desk, both hands planted firmly, eyes fixed on a copy of the divorce file. The words were familiar, yet suddenly strange. Something didn't sit right. He could feel it like a truth, stirring beneath years of settled dust. "Take a good look at the name of Anna's attorney," David said, pointing to the last note at the bottom of the page. That person wasn't even officially licensed at the time. In fact, his personal record only exists through a third-party company I dug into. And that company? It came through a referral from Nora. Ethan's brow furrowed. "You're saying Nora hired a fake lawyer to manipulate the divorce?" "That's not all." David slid another file across the desk. Here's the asset transfer record. A portion of your real estate shares were marked as temporarily held and later moved into a trust managed by Nora. The signature is yours, yes, but the procedure, completely off book, too fast, no independent legal counsel involved. Ethan's fists clenched. I also found a copy of the divorce letter that was sent to you. It clearly states that Anna refused contact, but the handwriting... David paused. It's Nora's. Ethan froze. He had trusted Nora without question. She was his cousin, his constant through youth, the one who stood by him through his early failures. How could he have imagined that the person he considered family would use that trust to sever the bond between him and the woman he once loved and the child he never even knew existed? The air thickened. Ethan felt like he'd been dragged back in time to those days in Europe, buried in the expansion project, convinced Anna had chosen to walk away. Now he knew. It hadn't been Anna's choice. In another scene, Nora sat in her upscale apartment, the glossy hardwood floors gleaming under the soft glow of warm yellow lights. A glass of red wine shimmered gently in her hand. On the table in front of her lay a stack of aged handwritten letters, the return address clearly marked from the poor neighborhood where Anna used to live. Those letters had never made it to Ethan. Nora picked one up, furrowed her brow, and reread a few lines. Ethan, if you're reading this, please come. Your son needs you. The handwriting was familiar, slanted Anna's. Nora let out a dry chuckle, then struck a match and lit the corner of the letter. The phone rang. She picked it up, her voice lowering, cold and sharp. Make sure no one talks, especially the girl or her injured little friend. If anything leaks, you know what's coming. On the other end, Henry's voice came through, quiet. I didn't expect him to come back. Ethan, he's not the kind to walk away. Then you better clean it up. I'll take care of the rest. Nora hung up and stood still for a moment. In the fireplace, the ashes of the letters rose silently, like a shadowy wisp from an old wound, a wound she would never allow anyone to touch. Back in David's office, Ethan gripped the folder in his hand. I'm reopening everything, David. Not for me. This is for Diego and Anna. We're bringing Henry into the light, and whoever's behind him. David nodded. Then we start with the account linking Henry and Nora. I've tracked a few suspicious transfers from 3 years ago, right around the time Henry moved in with Anna. Ethan looked at his friend, voice steady and firm. This time, no one gets left behind. What stirred in him now wasn't just anger, it was a quiet promise. He would find the evidence. He would prove the truth, not only to reclaim justice, but to protect that little boy, that woman, from the ones who had forced them to live in the shadows. A new chapter lay ahead, where the past was no longer something to flee from, but a light to follow. A light that would lead Ethan to face it, to act, and to make amends. Early morning. The rain had stopped by the time Ethan stood at Anna's front door. He held a container of hot porridge and a blister pack of fever medicine, his mind in turmoil. He tapped gently on the weathered wooden door this time, without the hesitation of before. The iron latch scraped open. The door creaked ajar. Anna appeared, hair hastily tied back, wearing a thin, wrinkled sweater. Her eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, her cheeks hollow. Her gaze was as grey as the morning sky, wary, distant. Diego's got a fever, hasn't she? Ethan spoke first. You don't have any medicine, do you? Anna was silent for a beat, then stepped aside. Ethan walked in, took off his coat, and set the porridge on the table. Without waiting to be asked, he emptied the pills into a cup of warm water, stirred it gently, and placed it on the nightstand beside the bed. You didn't have to do that, Anna said quietly, still not looking at him. I can manage. Think of it as breakfast for Diego, Ethan replied, his voice calm. That's all. In the small room, Diego was curled under the blanket, trembling. She blinked groggily as Ethan leaned down to touch her forehead. It was burning hot. He turned to Anna. She needs a doctor. I thought it would pass, but... Anna shook her head, worry in her voice. She's been burning up all night. I'll go get Dr. Marcel. Ethan turned to leave when a sharp sound broke from outside, brakes screeching. A car door slammed shut. Through the dust-blurred window, Henry's figure passed by head down, shoulders hunched. He didn't look in, just walked quickly into the house across the street. Anna froze. Ethan didn't move. No one said a word. Outside the hallway of the small clinic, Dr. Marcel had just finished examining Diego and was writing a prescription. He frowned. It's a viral fever. The boy's dehydrated and weak. She needs to be taken to the hospital immediately. Do you have insurance? Anna pressed her lips together. Ethan spoke up first. If not, I'll cover the cost. Please do whatever needs to be done. As Ethan stepped out to get some water, he was surprised to find Anna waiting for him in the hallway. She stood, with her arms crossed, her gaze no longer sharp, just tired. The two stood in silence for a moment, the only sound being the doctor's footsteps echoing from down the hall. Anna spoke first. I saw... She smiled in her sleep. First time in months. Ethan gave a small nod. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want to make something right. Not for you. For Diego. Anna turned slightly toward him, her eyes clouded. But why? Why not a single word in 3 years? Not a message? Not once did you ask? Ethan tightened his grip on the water cup. I believed what Nora told me. She sent the divorce papers, said you didn't want contact anymore. I was in Zurich then, drowning in deadlines. Everything hit at once. And I was stupid enough not to question a thing. Anna looked away, then exhaled softly. Henry showed up a few months after you disappeared. I was worn out. No money, no support, no idea where you even were. Henry, he seemed like someone who listened, someone who cared, and Diego needed a home. Ethan's voice dropped. But he didn't give you that. At first he did, then came the control, the shouting, the violence. But I had no choice. Every time I tried to leave, he threatened to throw both me and Diego out. That house used to be my father's, but somehow it ended up in his name. Ethan frowned, David's earlier words echoing in his head. I don't know why. The documents, the support payments, they never reached me. I wrote letters, dozens of them, but you never replied. And I thought, maybe you really had turned your back on me. Ethan raised a hand to cover his face. A part of the truth had come to light, but behind it still lay Nora and a plan he hadn't fully seen. At that moment, Ethan's phone rang. It was David. Ethan, I found a suspicious transfer from one of Nora's investment funds, funneled into an intermediary account. The one who withdrew it, Henry. Same time, he started living with Anna. Ethan growled through his teeth. She used my money to pay the man who abused my child. It's worse than that. The house where Anna lived with Diego, it used to be in her father's name, but the transfer documents, the signature that confirmed the ownership change, it was Nora's. By late afternoon, Diego had drifted into sleep. Anna sat silently by her bedside, dark circles under her eyes. Ethan brought back a cup of hot coffee, setting it down in front of her. You need to rest for a bit. Anna looked at him. No thank you. No words, just her trembling hands reaching for the cup. At the end of the hallway, the figure in the black coat was still standing there. When Ethan turned to look, the man turned away, vanishing around the corner. No one knew who he was, but his presence was unmistakable, a sign that darkness was moving. 3 days after Diego was admitted to the hospital, her fever had gone down. But Ethan was no longer sleeping peacefully. He had left the motel early that morning without telling Anna. In his hand was a list of people he needed to meet, people who had seen, heard, or stayed silent. The lights were still on at the neighborhood clinic when Ethan arrived to see Selena. She was sitting at her desk, organizing the medication logs. Her eyes were red, but her gaze remained sharp. "I'm not someone who's used to courtrooms," Selena said, after Ethan explained what he needed. "But if it comes to it, I'll tell everything. I saw Henry lock Diego out on the porch in the dead of winter. I saw Anna cover the bruises on her arms with long sleeves." Ethan nodded his thanks. After Selena, he visited Mr. Marcel, the elderly doctor who had treated Diego many times. "I don't have official records because Anna always refused to open a medical file," the doctor said. "But I remember every injury, every prescription. I'm willing to testify." Ethan moved on to the small grocery store at the end of the block, where Mrs. Martha was restocking the snack shelves. "That Henry boy once banned Diego from coming into my store because he was too unruly. I saw his cry so hard, she passed out right outside that door. If you need an old woman to tell the truth, I'll go with you." That evening in David's office, the two men sat facing each other, a detailed financial report spread out on the desk between them. David pointed to a series of red highlighted dates. "Here, assets from your company's fund were moved into a shadow account under an intermediary's name. 3 months later, Henry began withdrawing steady amounts from that account. There's no reason he'd have access unless someone gave him the green light." Ethan's eyes locked onto the name N. Rutherford in the transfer documents. "Nora. She did this. Even before I left. She gave Henry the money, hired a fake lawyer, controlled internal communications in the company. But she's too careful," David said. "Almost no direct evidence. We need testimony. And maybe a direct confrontation." Nora received an invitation to cooperate in an investigation from the court via email. She sat in her office, staring coldly at the computer screen. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked up the phone and called Henry. "I told you to keep your mouth shut. Now he's dragging that whole rundown neighborhood in as witnesses. What the hell were you thinking?" Henry's voice came through the phone, confused and anxious. "I didn't know he was going to push it this far. I thought he was just bluffing." Nora clenched her fist, her voice tight and deliberate. "From now on, it's all on you. I was forced into this. I know nothing about the assault. The house is in your name. You took the money, got it." "And what about the money from your cousin's company?" Henry snapped back. "You told me to temporarily take a few $100 million because I crashed the company car while drunk. You cleaned up the mess. You said all I had to do was play the doting husband papers, transfers. You'd handle everything. And now, you're dumping it all on me." Nora was silent for a few seconds, then coldly hung up. He wasn't wrong, not entirely. And that was the part she didn't want anyone bringing up. An hour later, Henry sat in his old car, parked on the empty lot behind the industrial zone, his hand trembling as he dialed Ethan's number. Cold sweat trickled down his spine, even though the car windows were fogged over with condensation. "It's me, Henry," he said. "I know she's planning to run. I have proof bank transfers, an old recorded conversation, but I want protection, and I'll cooperate if you agree." Ethan straightened up in his seat, his voice low and cold. "I agree, but this time, don't try anything." Henry was silent for a few seconds, then spoke hoarsely. "I just want to stay alive. Beyond that, Whatever you want to know, I'll tell you everything." He paused for a breath, like he was dredging memories from a filthy pit. "Back then, I'd just been fired for getting into a drunken fight. Smashed a $1 million drilling machine at the site. No money. Couldn't even get a lease without someone else signing. That's when she came to Nora." His voice turned bitter. "She knew everything. About me. About Anna. About you being gone. Said if I could take care of her and the kid, she'd pay off my debts, put the lease in her name, and send me regular support. All I had to do was keep Anna within reach." "Keep her," Ethan repeated, his voice sharp as a blade. Henry sucked in a breath. "Not like that, just make sure she didn't talk to anyone, especially you. She was scared Anna might spill everything, the letters, the divorce. She said, if that boy opens his mouth, my whole life goes down with it." Ethan said nothing for a long time. Ethan tightened his grip on the phone. "Send the recording and the wire transfer receipt to my attorney. Tonight." Henry nodded. Ethan couldn't see it, but in that brief silence, it felt for the first time in a long while as if Henry was doing the right thing. When the call ended, Ethan didn't drive off right away. He just sat there, the headlights casting a pale glow against the windshield like a thin veil of mist. He didn't feel victorious. All he felt was a hollow depth inside him, like a well where no truth, no matter how exposed, could ever bring back what was lost. While David was reviewing the property transfer records, an old envelope surfaced among Nora's personal documents papers Henry had secretly taken from her cabinet during a routine cleanup he'd been assigned. Inside was a bundle of handwritten letters, carefully sealed, each one bearing Anna's distinctive slanted script. They were addressed specifically to Ethan. David handed them over to Ethan, his expression grave. "You should read these, you should. They're not legal evidence, but they're the truth you need to know." Ethan quietly opened them one by one. Each line felt like a slow blade pressing into his chest. "Ethan, if you're reading this, please come back. Our son needs you. I don't understand why you disappeared, but I've still been hoping for a reply. I wasn't strong enough to face it all on my own. Today is his birthday. He asked me, 'Is Dad real, or did you make him up to make me happy?' I didn't know what to say." Ethan rested his elbow on his forehead, eyes rimmed with red. Those letters had never reached him, and maybe, if even one had arrived at the right moment, everything might have turned out differently. David placed a steady hand on his friend's shoulder. "Now, you have everything. The memories, the truth, a witness. The question is, where do you go from here?" Ethan looked up. His voice was hoarse but unwavering. "All the way." Early in the morning, the special investigation team raided a nondescript rental apartment on the southern coastal edge of the city. After days of tracking her through credit card transactions and surveillance footage, Nora Rutherford was finally taken into custody. When the police read the arrest warrant, she didn't resist. She simply gave a faint smile. The kind of smile from someone who knows the final act has arrived. In the city courthouse, the air in the courtroom was thick with tense silence. Ethan sat in the front row beside his attorney, David. Across the aisle, Nora entered looking calm, wearing a pale grey dress and no makeup. Henry, looking worn out and terrified, was escorted in by police officers. The judge opened the proceedings, announcing the start of both the civil and criminal trials involving financial fraud, child abuse, and document forgery related to the divorce between Ethan and Anna Stevenson. David began by presenting a structured overview of the evidence. Financial transfers from Ethan's company to an account controlled by Nora. Divorce papers showing forged handwriting. Testimonies from neighbors and a doctor confirming signs of abuse on Diego. Selena was called first. She stood upright, her voice steady and clear. "I'm the one who wrote the letter to Ethan, not Anna. She didn't know anything about it. I couldn't stand by and watch the mother and son suffer any longer." Mr. Marcel stepped forward with unofficial medical records. "Diego has a scar on her left shoulder, a tear caused by a hard object, not something she could have done to herself. I treated her in secret because her mother was afraid of retaliation." Henry was called to the stand next. His head bowed. "I took money from Nora. At first, to keep quiet. Then to play the part, the husband, the father. But I didn't know she had it all planned out like that. I just wanted to be left alone." Nora pushed back. "Those payments have nothing to do with me. I never personally signed any of those documents." The room fell silent when David played a recording of a phone call between Henry and Nora. In it, Nora could be clearly heard saying, "I've cleared the way for you. All you have to do is play your part. That kid, the less she talks, the better." Nora's eyes flickered with a hint of fear, but she still stood up, facing Ethan and everyone present in the courtroom. "He was always the one people loved, the one they chose. And what about me? I worked just as hard, carried just as much, but no one ever noticed. Again and again, Ethan was called a genius, and I was just the hard-working cousin. I lived with that for years until I couldn't anymore. I just wanted to take back something for myself." She drew in a deep breath, as if pulling up everything she had buried inside. "When I found out Anna was pregnant, I knew that if that child was born and Ethan stayed by her side, I'd be left behind for good. I just wanted to nudge the course a little. If only Ethan's trip lasted longer, if only the letter never reached her, if only Anna believed he had left her. I never thought it would come to this." Ethan gripped the armrest tightly. Behind him, Anna sat in shock, her eyes vacant. Martha wept. Marcel shook his head. Selena lowered hers, her hand clenching the hem of her dress. The judge finally spoke, cutting through the heavy silence. "Intent doesn't erase consequence. You did wrong, and now you must face what comes of it." Nora sat down, the defiance gone from her face. She wasn't a fighter anymore, just a woman who had lost, not because of evidence, but because jealousy had taken her too far. Ethan stood, looking directly at her. "You can be jealous. You can feel overlooked. But why choose to let an innocent child grow up in the shadows? You didn't just betray my trust, you stole that little boy's chance to have a real life. Everything I tried to protect, you crushed it under your envy." The judge gave a final nod, bringing the first hearing to a close. The trial would stretch on for days, but the turning point had come. The truth was no longer a mystery. When Ethan stepped out of the courtroom, the midday light touched his face gentle, like a promise. Across the street, Anna and Diego were waiting. Diego ran to him, wrapping her arms around his leg. Anna stood still at the curb, eyes glistening with tears. She had never imagined things ran so deep, had never dared to believe that the person closest to Ethan was the one who had dragged her and their son into the dark. "I'm sorry," Anna said, her voice trembling, "for not believing you, for thinking you'd left us." Ethan only shook his head, then gently pulled her into a quiet embrace, offering comfort without words. In the preliminary ruling announced the following week, Nora Rutherford was sentenced to 7 years in prison for document forgery, legal manipulation, and aiding in the concealment of child abuse. The court acknowledged the severe psychological damage her actions had caused to the victims and their families. Henry Clarkson, having chosen to cooperate and provide evidence, was granted a partial reduction in his sentence. Still, he received 4 years of incarceration for abuse and financial exploitation. In court, he bowed his head, offering no excuses. The house that had once been under Henry's name, the same place where Anna and Diego had lived through cold and fear, was officially ordered by the court to be returned to Anna Stevenson, in accordance with the original property agreement from the manipulated divorce years ago. Ethan declined any claim of ownership. It should be where they start over, not me. A month after the trial, the small neighborhood where Anna and Diego had once lived seemed wrapped in a new skin. The decaying walls slowly vanished, replaced by fresh red bricks and warmly lit windows, like a heart rekindled after a long, bitter winter. Ethan personally oversaw the renovation of the old house. He was no longer the man in ties and meetings, buried in charts and deadlines. Now, he wore a t-shirt, his hands speckled with paint, hauling bricks alongside the workers, measuring every wire and beam. The kitchen, once home to nothing more than thin porridge, now glowed with light wood, a new gas stove, and a cozy dining table. In the center of that table, among all the hearty dishes, Ethan placed a small bowl of white salt, a quiet nod to the night he returned, and everything began to change. Selina, with Ethan's support, underwent corrective surgery at a respected hospital. After her recovery, she opened a small tailor shop beside Mrs. Martha's grocery store. The two women who had once quietly stood behind Anna were now partners, stitching not just fabric, but trust back into the neighborhood. Mr. Marcel, with his experience and quiet dedication, was invited by Ethan to serve as medical advisor to a newly established charity. The Community Health Foundation, named after Diego, was created to help underprivileged children access basic medical care. As for Ethan, after handing over the reins of his company to David, he stepped away from the business world entirely. He chose to spend the rest of his life on charitable projects with his small family and on the simple, quiet joys he had once overlooked. That night, for the first time in many years, the three of them, Ethan, Anna, and Diego, sat around the dinner table in their brightly lit home. Outside, snow had begun to fall, each flake landing gently on the rooftop, as if winter itself were whispering in peace. Diego sat in the middle, chatting between bites about his day at school. He laughed, cheeks rosy with warmth. Anna watched her son, gently wrapping her fingers around Ethan's hand. Ethan smiled, brushing Diego's hair from his face. "So, how do you like the new house, little one?" Diego nodded, eyes shining. "It's warm, like there's a fire in my heart, like having a dad." Ethan said nothing, just gave Diego's hand a quiet squeeze, holding on to everything at once: the present, the past, and the promise of what lay ahead. The small bowl of salt on the table shimmered softly beneath the light, no longer a symbol of hardship, but the flavor of truth, of family, finally found again. The first spring after that long, dark winter arrived as gently as a breath. Sunlight filtered through the budding trees, casting a warm glow on the narrow road leading into the once neglected neighborhood, now transformed into a place clean, welcoming, and filled with laughter. At the small park next to Anna's house, Ethan hosted a special festival for single mothers and their families. Long tables were dressed in white cloth, with homemade pastries, traditional games, and a small stage built from reclaimed wood. Children's laughter echoed through the air. Adults gathered in small groups, sharing stories. Ethan stepped onto the stage. Behind him was a large sign that read, "The Diego Foundation Inauguration for Children Without a Voice." He kept it short. "I once had everything: money, status, reputation. But I lost the most important thing: family. Today I choose to begin again, one day at a time, with all of you, and for all of you." The crowd broke into applause. Among the rows of chairs, Anna sat with Diego and Selina. Anna's face softened, her eyes shimmering. When the program paused for a break, Selina stood up and walked to the stage, holding a gift wrapped in simple brown paper. "I'm not good at speaking in front of people," she said, her eyes on Diego. "But today, I want to give back something I've kept for a long time." She handed Diego a small wooden frame. Inside was the very first drawing the little boy had ever given to Ethan, laminated and bordered with floral fabric, hand-stitched by Selena herself. Diego drew this while she was running a fever. It's a house, with lights in the window and 2 grown-ups. When he woke up, he asked me, "Miss Selena, why did I dream about having a dad?" I didn't know how to answer him. Selena turned to Ethan, her smile tinged with sadness, but peaceful. Today, he doesn't have to dream anymore, because his dad is here. Ethan stepped forward and gently hugged Diego, his hands trembling. Anna rested her hand on his shoulder, saying nothing. No one cried, but their eyes glistened. Ethan and Anna stood nearby, hand in hand, watching her with quiet contentment. Spring sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a soft golden blessing across their shoulders. Ethan's voice came, like a memory spoken aloud. There's no shortage of pain in this world, but sometimes one kind act, one honest word, can change the course of someone's life. And from that day on, no one was left behind. Sometimes, a letter that never reaches its destination can still change a life's direction. But the real miracle is this: if just one person dares to stand up, the truth still has a chance to be heard. The story of Anna, Diego, and Ethan is not only about justice, it's a reminder that each of us can be a small light in someone else's darkness. Even if we've once lost our way, where there is love, there is always a way back. What do you think about what Nora did? If it were you, could you forgive a cousin like that? And if you've ever written a silent cry for help, did you hope someone would hear it? Thank you for staying with us until the end of this journey. If you are a mother or simply a woman who has ever been hurt, are you okay? Now, take a sip of warm water. Rub your hands gently. Moisturize your skin. Then allow yourself to rest, because tomorrow you'll be gentle again and strong just as you've always been.